Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about bridging the gap. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how would you bridge the gap between product and dev teams, particularly addressing scope creep, product requirements, technical priorities and unrealistic timelines? Well, I have a technique that I use. It's the one that I argue is, in my opinion, if you just work this way, you never have an issue. In my opinion, at the very least, you never have really much of an issue with any deliverables or so forth. But let me walk you through it a little bit, because that doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to be on time or things like that. So what I advocate for is to follow two principles. It's called right-left and top-down. And basically what that is, it means if you think of a Kanban board where you have different phases like ongoing, ready for work, ongoing testing, reviews, or done columns and so forth and so forth. Usually a standard agile workflow or a standard Kanban flow is you just move cards until they're done and then you ship. And that's the right left. Basically what I'm saying is that moving away from this, not everybody does this, but a lot of software teams have this tendency where they view a card as the responsibility of a single developer. And what I usually tell teams is that when you're working with me, you are responsible for every single card on that board. That basically means that if a card is closer to the right, in other words, it's closer to being done, unless someone else is working on that and you can't help them with it, like a classic one is that you have a story and a software developer is already on that thing and you can't provide any assistance that makes it go faster, then it's fine for you to work on something like pick something new or so forth and so forth. But if something is possible to help out with or give support or so forth, you are expected to take up that job or like to pick up that card. And I make that super clear to everybody in my teams, and I tell them, if you don't know how to write a good story card, you're going to learn. Because if one of the developers gets sick or something like that, then we realize that, yeah, it's probably going to be difficult for us to wait for this person. You pick up that story card. Whoever is available is going to pick it up. And for some people, like as I said, like sometimes I've seen this, it's super common, like, oh yeah, the Bob started working on this story and now Bob is sick for it, it's gone for a vacation on a week, and then Jane goes and picks another story because she believes that that is Bob's story, and I go, no, you pick it up. That's why you make sure that the story card has all the necessary information about the story, all the things you've been doing, things like that, because it's a piece of work. It's like, as I treat it as moving boxes, basically. I don't care who picks up the box and moves it to where it should be. Just do it. And the reason why I do that is because by doing that, you are, by definition, always working on the thing that is going to give the, like, that has the, that is closest to being done, which means that you are, in terms of a workflow, never wasting time on things that are lower priority. And that ties into the second thing, which is top down. Top down means that the backlog or the priority queue is always in terms of highest relevancy, highest priority, all and downwards. Like the top thing is always going to be the thing that is most important, and then it's sort of is ordered from there, which means that at any given moment there every single software developer in the entire team is working on the thing that is closest to being done and the thing that is most important. And if you follow those principles, then by definition you cannot work faster. Like you cannot have priority that is as fast as it's possible to move for a given team, and that is the key thing for a given team. So if my managers or my stakeholders or so forth feel like we're too slow or things like that, I always tell them you can add more developers or you can reduce the scope of what we're going to build. Or you can give, like another one is for speed is a classic one. Speed is the hardest thing, and I've said that to quite a lot of software developers and engineering managers and so forth. When people come and say, oh, we're too slow, we need to make this go faster, and I go, yeah, the problem is that you want, like as I've said before, guys, you can add more developers and you can get more work at the same time going. Like you can in parallel, and sometimes you can speed up a single story, but it's very, like, it's not all that common that happens. But when it comes to a specific task where there's only one or two people maybe who are able to work on that effectively, because even if you had 100 people, you, as I'd like to say, if you ask 100 people to milk a cow, you're still going to get exactly the same amount of, it's going to take the same amount as if you picked 2 people or 3 people. Like, there is a sweet spot for how many people can be engaged in the task efficiently at any given moment. And once you have saturated that and there is no more room for other people, it doesn't matter if you have even more people, because that specific task is going to take the time it takes. And so what I tell managers is that if you want a specific task to go faster, you have to have more talented developers, because and that is the only thing I usually advocate for when I talk to teams and managers and companies and so forth, that having more developers does not mean necessarily that a thing is going to be faster. So if your deadline is getting too close for comfort or things like that, there's very little you can do. As I said, like, these are the people that you hired, and usually at the very least, and by the time that you need to meet the deadline and you feel like, oh no, these people are too slow, and you want to replace them, it's already too late. That's why I keep on advocating for get the right people for the job, get the right people for the job. And I just have such a hard time getting this through to some managers and so forth, where they will take random software developers, put them on tasks or in projects where I know for a fact that these guys and girls, they're not going to be able to meet the expectations. They can code, absolutely, but they're not going to be able to do it in the way that the management wants. And as I've said before, guys, that has mostly to do with that our industry is looked upon as sort of construction work or so forth, that you're looking at a software developer as just a unit of a person that is going to deliver some work. But it's much more realistic, in my opinion, to say that it's like hiring an artist, an engineer, or an athlete, like a football player or something like that, where they are different. They are at different levels. Some of them are going to be able to perform at a much, much higher level than others, regardless of how, like, what bracket you put them in, if they're senior, junior, etc., etc. They're very different in terms of problem-solving skills and so forth. And so what I do with my stakeholders is literally like, we sit down, we groom and prepare all of our stories, put them in, as I said, right, left, top, down, that system. That means that every single stakeholder knows that, okay, we are currently working on the thing that is most important. They can change their mind. Like, anybody can come at any moment and say, oh yeah, but now this other thing is more important. I go, okay, which order do you want us to put it in? And that puts us in this, for me, a very simple situation where literally whatever they decide, they can change their minds at any moment, but it doesn't change anything for us as the software team. Because if they feel that they want to scope creep, go ahead, scope creep. And then they come and ask why it's not done, and I say, yeah, I don't know, like, I'm assuming that you understood that because you changed the scope or you added more work, it's still going to take the same amount of time. Because, as I've said, the only thing that they have to deal with is either reduce the complexity of the problem so we don't have to do as much work, or increase the velocity of the work. And as I said, guys, if you put yourself in this position, no one can come in and say that, oh, you're too slow, and blame you for that things are not going to fast enough, apart from, of course, that you don't have the talent to deliver. But as I said, okay, then all right, let's fire this team, or let's fire these people and hire other people, and then you have to start the whole thing over. Like, so people can complain, they can come with unrealistic timelines and things like that, but at the end of the day, the problem is what the problem is. And when you have this structure, top down, right, left, it becomes super easy to argue for that, well, we don't have the resources to do this, clearly, because, as I said, you are working on the most important thing, and everything that is currently ongoing is always prioritized in terms of the thing that is closest to being done. How would you improve upon that system? So what I want you to take away from this is that I usually have a pretty easy time dealing with the gap between product and dev teams, because all I ever have to have is a conversation with, if somebody's unhappy with, priorities or unrealistic timelines or things like that, I just have to sit them down and say, okay, here's the top item. Is that still the most important thing we could work on? and then everybody gets to say, and like they debate and they argue back and forth about yes or no, and like, oh, this is more important, that is more important, and then I just put it in the order that they wanted. And then when everybody agrees in which order, we start making stories, we put them in the board, and I say to all the development teams that you are responsible, each one of us is responsible for not just knowing what your card means, you need to know what the other cards are about as well, because if someone is gone or someone doesn't really know how to do something, you are expected to help out with that story. There's no like, oh, that's my card, that's your card, in my teams at the very least, which means that literally there is no way for us to work more effectively, if you ask me at the very least, in terms of like priorities and things like that. So we have the best priorities we can have at a given moment. We can change it, but right now that's the best we know. Then everything else comes down to, do you have enough people, and are they good enough or like fast enough at the work? And that always becomes the same question, like because usually when you start a software team, you put these people in there and you figure out they're fast enough or they're slow or like whatever it might be, right? So by the time someone comes and says, oh, we need to meet these deadlines and so forth, I go, yeah, you can reduce the problem, or you can increase the way we like have the speed that we work, and those are your only options. And like, I've never had a discussion with anybody where they didn't understand that either you need more like better people, or you need more people, or some people go, oh yeah, but then we have to work overtime and things like that, and I go, sure, we can go overtime, or like, you know, we debate back and forth how we're going to solve this problem. Usually it's a discussion, like you, as I've said to you guys before, sometimes guys, you just have to go through it with the people involved, and they will start to realize that, yeah, you're going to have to lower your expectations. And there is very little else that they can do, because they don't have the money to hire more people. They can't just throw away the people that they have, because that's going to delay even more by the time that they realize that they want it faster, and so forth and so forth. So usually this situation just ends with people feeling like, yeah, they want it faster, like they so forth and so forth, but it just continues until it's done. Like, it's just for me, it's just a process. Like, it's usually the case that very little comes from stakeholders feeling this or that and so forth. You just have to manage their expectations and emotions and sort of lead them through the process. It's a little bit like giving medicine to your kids or something like that. They might not like it, and they're going to complain every single time you do it. But you as a parent, you sort of know that, yeah, they're going to bitch and whine about their vegetables or their medicine and so forth. But after a little while, they're going to settle into it and be back to normal again. Have a great day.